The sound of Noah's crying echoed off the peeling wallpaper of our tiny apartment, bouncing between the thin walls like a desperate Morse code. 3 a.m. again, the third night this week. My eyes burned as I fumbled in the dark, my bare feet padding across the cold linoleum. "Shoo baby, mommy's here," I whispered, lifting my 8-month-old son from his second-hand crib. His tiny body trembled against mine, warm and damp with sweat. The faint scent of baby powder and the sweet milk smell of his breath filled my nostrils as I pressed my lips to his forehead. No fever, thank God, just another tooth pushing through his tender gums. I swayed back and forth in the patch of silver moonlight cutting through the thin curtains, feeling the weight of exhaustion pressing down on my shoulders like concrete. Single motherhood wasn't what I'd planned. None of this was. Not the cramped one-bedroom apartment in the forgotten corner of the city. Not the 3 jobs I juggled just to keep a roof over our heads. Not the father who vanished the moment I told him I was pregnant. "We're okay," I murmured, more to myself than to Noah, who was finally settling against my shoulder. "We're going to be just fine." The lie tasted bitter on my tongue. The truth was hidden in the stack of past-due notices on the kitchen counter, in the empty refrigerator, save for a half-gallon of milk and some baby food, in the $27 left in my bank account that needed to stretch until payday, still 4 days away. I slid down the wall onto the floor, cradling Noah against my chest, and reached for my phone. 3:15 in the morning was as good a time as any to sort through the waitressing jobs on the employment app. My day job as a receptionist at Archer Medical Plaza barely covered rent, and my weekend shifts at the diner had been cut back. I needed something to fill the gap, even if it meant more hours away from Noah, more money spent on the sitter. My thumb scrolled mindlessly through listings, each one blurring into the next, when a text from Sophie, my closest friend and sometimes babysitter, caught my eye. "Did you call that number I sent you? The restaurant is hiring and the tips are insane. You could make in one night what you make in a week at that greasy diner." I hadn't called. The restaurant Elysium was the kind of place where the wealthy went to see and be seen. The kind of place that wouldn't look twice at a sleep-deprived single mother with perpetually stained fingernails and drugstore makeup. But desperation has a way of silencing pride. With Noah still nestled against me, his breathing now deep and even, I opened my voice recorder app. I'd send Sophie a message explaining that I'd call tomorrow, ask her if she could put in a good word. My thumb hovered over the record button as Noah shifted, letting out a soft whimper before settling again. "Sophie, hey, it's me," I whispered, conscious of Noah's finally peaceful state. "I'll call that restaurant tomorrow. I need to know if they're really okay with my situation. Noah and the hours, you know. I can't afford to lose another job if they decide a single mom is too much trouble." I paused, swallowing the knot in my throat. "Things are tight right now. Really tight. I'm scared, Sophie. The landlord's threatening eviction, and Noah's dad is still ghosting me on child support. I don't know how much longer I can." Noah stirred again, releasing a louder whimper, and I stopped recording, soothing him with gentle pats on his back. When he settled, I finished my thought. "Anyway, call me when you can. Love you." I hit stop and, squinting in the dim light, tapped to send the voice message. Only when I looked back at the screen did my stomach drop to the floor. I hadn't sent it to Sophie. In my exhaustion, I'd sent the desperate confession to an unknown number, one I'd called earlier that day about a private catering job posting I'd found online. No, I whispered frantically, tapping at my phone, searching for a way to unsend the message. But the status already showed delivered. Heat rushed to my face as embarrassment flooded through me. A stranger now knew my pathetic situation, had heard my baby's cries, my trembling voice confessing my failures. With shaking fingers, I typed out a quick apology. "I'm so sorry. Wrong number. Please ignore my previous message." I set the phone down, pressing my forehead against Noah's soft hair, inhaling his scent to calm my racing heart. It didn't matter, just some random person who'd never hire me now anyway. Just another door closing in my face. My phone buzzed, the screen illuminating the darkened room. A reply, already, at 3 o'clock in the morning. "Your voice message was received. The position is still available. Be at Elysium tomorrow, 4 p.m. sharp. Ask for Lorenzo. Bring your son if necessary." I stared at the message, reading it once, twice, a third time. The catering job posting hadn't mentioned Elysium. It had been for a private event at an undisclosed location. And how did they know about the restaurant position? A cold, prickling sensation crawled up my spine. Another message appeared. And Clara, your financial troubles are about to end. My blood turned to ice. I never mentioned my name in the voice message. Sleep evaded me for the remainder of the night. Noah eventually drifted off in his crib while I sat cross-legged on my bed, the glow of my laptop illuminating my face as I searched for any information about Elysium and its owner. The restaurant was exclusive, as I'd suspected. Reservations required months in advance, no prices listed on the menu. If you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. The owner wasn't mentioned anywhere, just a parent company called DeLuca Holdings. When the first gray light of dawn filtered through my curtains, I'd made my decision. I would go to Elysium at 4, not because of the mysterious text messages, but because I couldn't afford not to pursue any job opportunity. I'd simply clarify the confusion, apologize for the misdirected message, and hopefully interview for the waitressing position Sophie had mentioned. The day passed in a blur of routine, dropping Noah at Mrs. Navarro's apartment downstairs, rushing to catch the bus to the medical plaza, answering phones with a plastic smile, eating a granola bar at my desk instead of lunch to save money. By the time I picked up Noah and returned to our apartment to prepare for the interview, my nerves were frayed. What does Mommy wear to meet a mysterious stranger who knows her name? I asked Noah, who gurgled happily from his bouncy seat as I tore through my limited wardrobe. I settled on my one decent outfit, a simple black dress that could pass for professional or cocktail attire, depending on accessories. I arrived at Elysium at 3:55 p.m., pushing Noah's stroller through the crisp autumn air. The restaurant was housed in a renovated historic building, its facade elegant with clean lines and subtle lighting. Even from the outside, it exuded exclusivity. A doorman in a tailored suit stood at attention, his eyes scanning me from head to toe as I approached. "I'm here to see Lorenzo," I said, hating the tremor in my voice. "I have an appointment at 4. The doorman's expression didn't change, but he nodded once and opened the door. "They're expecting you, Miss Moretti." My last name. Now they knew my last name, too. The unease that had been simmering all day threatened to boil over, but I pushed Noah's stroller through the door anyway, desperation a more powerful motivator than fear. The interior of Elysium was breathtaking, soaring ceilings with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and plush velvet seating in deep jewel tones. The air smelled of expensive cologne and truffle oil. A hostess in a sleek black dress approached immediately. "Ms. Moretti, welcome to Elysium." Her smile was practiced, professional. "Mr. DeLuca is waiting for you in the private dining room. Please follow me." Mr. DeLuca, not Lorenzo. I followed her through the nearly empty restaurant, my heart hammering against my ribs. The wheels of Noah's stroller squeaked slightly on the marble floor. The hostess led me to a door at the back of the main dining area, knocked once, and then opened it, gesturing for me to enter. "Mr. DeLuca, Ms. Moretti has arrived." I stepped into what appeared to be a private dining room, elegant and intimate with a single table set for 2 in the center. And there, standing with his back to me, looking out a large window that overlooked the city, was a man. He turned slowly, and my breath caught in my throat. He was younger than I'd expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with dark hair cut short and expensive looking. He wore a tailored suit that accentuated broad shoulders and a lean frame. But it was his eyes that captured me, dark and intense. They seemed to look through me rather than at me. There was something dangerous in that gaze, something that made me want to grab Noah and run. "Clara Moretti," he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was tasting it. His voice was deep, with the faintest trace of an accent I couldn't place. "At last, we meet." Noah chose that moment to let out a soft babble, drawing the man's attention to the stroller. Something flashed across his face, an emotion too quick to identify before his expression smoothed into a mask of polite interest. "And this must be Noah," he said, stepping closer to the stroller, close enough that I caught the scent of his cologne, something woodsy and expensive. He peered down at Noah, who stared back with wide, curious eyes. "He has your eyes." A chill ran through me. "How do you know my son's full name?" The man, Lorenzo DeLuca, straightened and smiled, though the expression didn't reach his eyes. "Please sit down. We have much to discuss." He gestured to one of the chairs at the table. "I believe you sent me a voice message last night by mistake, about your situation." I remained standing, one hand gripping the stroller handle so tightly my knuckles turned white. Who are you, and how do you know so much about me? My name is Lorenzo De Luca. I own this restaurant, among other businesses. He moved to the table, pulling out a chair for me. And as for how I know about you, Clara, let's just say I make it my business to know everything about people who interest me. And why would I interest you? My voice sounded stronger than I felt. His dark eyes held mine, unblinking. That voice message, your desperation, your son's cry. He paused, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly, and the mention of Noah's father ghosting on child support. Tell me, what's his name? The man who abandoned his responsibilities. The conversation had taken a turn I hadn't anticipated. I don't see how that's relevant to a job interview. A smile played at the corners of Lorenzo's mouth. This isn't a job interview, Clara, at least not for a waitressing position. He finally sat down, motioning again for me to do the same. Please sit. I have a proposition for you that will solve all your financial problems. Against my better judgment, I sat, pulling Noah's stroller close to my side. What kind of proposition? I need someone I can trust for a particular role in my organization. Someone desperate enough to be loyal, smart enough to learn quickly, and with enough at stake to never betray me. His gaze flickered to Noah, then back to me. Your accidental message convinced me you might be that person. My pulse quickened. What organization? What role? De Luca Holdings has diverse interests, he said smoothly. The position would be as my personal assistant, handling sensitive matters, scheduling, some travel arrangements. The pay is $50,000 more per year than you're currently making across all 3 of your jobs combined. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. How do you know what I make? As I said, I make it my business to know. He leaned forward slightly. You'd have comprehensive health care for both you and Noah, a car and driver at your disposal, a new apartment in a building I own rent-free. The offer was so outrageous, so unexpected, that I almost laughed. Why would you offer all that to a complete stranger? You're not a complete stranger anymore, Clara, he said softly. I heard your voice in the middle of the night. I heard your fear for your child's future. I respect that kind of raw honesty. I wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to accept what he was offering, but suspicion nagged at me. What's the catch? Absolute loyalty and discretion, he replied without hesitation. And one more thing. His expression hardened, something cold and dangerous flickering behind his eyes. I want the name of your son's father, the man who abandoned you both. The request sent a shiver down my spine. Why? Lorenzo's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say I have a particular dislike for men who don't fulfill their obligations. He reached into his suit jacket and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table to me. Think about my offer. Call that number when you've decided. As I reached for the card, his fingers brushed against mine, sending an unexpected jolt of electricity up my arm. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I glimpsed something possessive in his gaze, something that made my heart race for reasons I didn't want to examine. Why me? I whispered. He stood, buttoning his jacket with an elegant flick of his wrist. Sometimes, Clara, the right person comes into your life at exactly the right moment. His eyes dropped to Noah, who was watching him with curious eyes. Or perhaps it's the wrong moment, for all the right reasons. 3 days passed before I called the number on Lorenzo De Luca's card. 3 days of weighing impossible options while staring at past due notices. 3 days of watching Noah sleep and wondering what kind of mother considers working for a man who sends chills down her spine just by looking at her. The deciding factor came in the form of an eviction notice slipped under my door on the 3rd morning, giving me 72 hours to pay in full or vacate. I sat on the floor of my apartment, Noah crawling over my legs as I dialed the number with trembling fingers. It rang only once. Clara. Lorenzo's voice came through immediately, as if he'd been waiting by the phone. Not a question but a statement of certainty. I was beginning to think you wouldn't call. My voice caught in my throat. I closed my eyes, picturing Noah homeless, pictured us sleeping in my rusted-out car. I'm interested in your offer. Good. The satisfaction in his voice was palpable. Pack essential items for yourself and Noah. My driver will collect you in an hour. The rest of your belongings will be moved tomorrow. An hour. I glanced wildly around the apartment. I haven't even given notice at my jobs. I can't just. All taken care of, he interrupted smoothly. Archer Medical Plaza has received your resignation letter, effective immediately. The diner as well. A chill ran through me. You had no right. I had every confidence in your decision, Clara. His tone left no room for argument. 1 hour. Pack. The line went dead before I could respond. I stared at my phone, my heart hammering against my ribs. What had I just agreed to? And how had he already arranged my resignations, as if my acceptance were a foregone conclusion? Noah pulled himself up on the coffee table, babbling happily, oblivious to the crossroads we'd just passed. I scooped him up, breathing in his sweet scent, letting it center me. It's just a job, I whispered to him. Just a very strange, very well-paying job. The driver arrived exactly 1 hour later, a stern-faced man in a dark suit who introduced himself only as Miles Carter. He loaded our 2 suitcases into the trunk of a sleek black sedan with tinted windows while I secured Noah's car seat. The interior of the car smelled of expensive leather and faintly of the same cologne Lorenzo wore. Where are we going? I asked as Miles pulled away from the curb. Mr. DeLuca has arranged accommodations for you and your son in the Archer building, he answered, his eyes meeting mine briefly in the rear-view mirror. The Archer building? Even I knew of it, a high-rise luxury apartment building downtown where penthouses reportedly sold for 8 figures. Miles continued, your apartment has been furnished according to Mr. DeLuca's specifications. If anything isn't to your liking, a decorator can make adjustments tomorrow. I didn't respond, too overwhelmed by the speed at which my life was changing. Noah babbled in his car seat beside me, reaching for my hand. I gave him my finger to hold, drawing comfort from his tiny grip. The Archer building rose 40 stories into the sky, all glass and steel and modern angles. A doorman rushed to open the car door when we arrived. Another appeared to help with our luggage, and a concierge greeted me by name in the marble-floored lobby. Ms. Moretti, welcome to the Archer. I'm Mr. Alden, the head concierge. Mr. DeLuca has instructed me to provide you with everything you need. He led us to a private elevator at the back of the lobby, using a key card to summon it. You're in apartment 3801, the entire 38th floor. My jaw dropped. The entire floor? Mr. Alden nodded as if this were perfectly normal. Mr. DeLuca thought you and young Master Noah would appreciate the space. The elevator doors opened directly into the apartment, and I stepped out into what felt like another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. The open-concept living area was larger than my entire previous apartment, furnished with sleek modern pieces that somehow managed to look both expensive and comfortable. The kitchen gleamed with stainless steel appliances and marble countertops. The nursery is this way, Mr. Alden said, leading me down a hallway. Mr. DeLuca had it specially prepared. The nursery took my breath away, painted a soft blue with stars on the ceiling. It contained a handcrafted wooden crib, a plush rocking chair, and shelves filled with books and toys. A state-of-the-art baby monitor sat on a dresser fully stocked with diapers, clothes, and everything Noah could possibly need. I couldn't find words. Mr. DeLuca will be arriving at 7 for dinner, Mr. Alden informed me, handing over a key card. The refrigerator and pantry have been stocked. If you need anything at all, press 1 on any of the house phones. After he left, I stood in the middle of the massive living room, Noah balanced on my hip, both of us staring out at the city spread below like a carpet of lights in the gathering dusk. What have I gotten us into, Noah? I whispered. As if in answer, my phone buzzed with a text message. I trust the apartment meets with your approval. I'll bring dinner at 7. No need to dress formally. LD. I spent the next hour exploring our new home, 3 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom, a home office, a laundry room, even a small gym. The master bedroom held a king-sized bed with the softest sheets I'd ever touched and a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in my size, price tags removed but designer labels evident. The bathroom featured a soaking tub big enough for 3 people and a shower with multiple heads. In Noah's nursery, I discovered that the clothes in his dresser were not only his current size but also the next 2 sizes up, organized by age. The refrigerator contained organic baby food, freshly made in glass containers labeled with ingredients. The level of detail was both impressive and unsettling. How long had Lorenzo been planning this? It seemed impossible that he'd arranged all this in the 3 days since our meeting. At precisely 7 o'clock, the elevator announced an arrival. I stood in the living room, Noah on my hip, my heart racing as Lorenzo De Luca stepped into the apartment. He wore a dark suit, no tie, his collar open to reveal the hollow of his throat. He carried 2 bags that smelled deliciously of spices and garlic. "Clara," he said, his dark eyes moving over me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Then his gaze shifted to Noah, and something in his expression softened fractionally. "And Noah, how are you settling in?" "It's overwhelming," I admitted, watching as he moved confidently through the apartment to the kitchen, setting the bags on the counter. "You'll adjust," he said, removing containers from the bags. "I brought dinner from Elysium. I thought you might prefer to eat here tonight rather than go out." I moved closer, keeping the kitchen island between us. "This is all too much. The apartment, the clothes, how did you even know my sizes?" Lorenzo looked up, his expression unreadable. "I told you, Clara, I make it my business to know things." He gestured to the dining table by the window. "Shall we eat? The chef prepared his signature pasta for you." He reached into one of the bags and withdrew a smaller container. "Organic pureed vegetables for Noah." The normalcy of sharing dinner with this enigmatic man was surreal. He asked about my day, about Noah's routine, making small talk as if we were old friends while I struggled to reconcile the luxurious surroundings with my previous life. "Tomorrow," he said as we finished eating, Noah now dozing against my shoulder, "you'll begin your duties as my personal assistant. Miles will arrive at 8 to take you to my office. A nanny will come to care for Noah." "A nanny?" I tensed. I don't know about leaving Noah with a stranger. Something dangerous flashed in Lorenzo's eyes. "Mrs. Hawthorne has worked for me for 15 years. She raised my sister's children. She is completely trustworthy." The possessive edge in his voice made me swallow whatever protest I was about to make. Instead, I asked, "What exactly will my job entail?" Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Initially, you'll manage my schedule, correspondence, travel arrangements. As you prove yourself, your responsibilities will expand." He paused, his gaze intense. "I have many business interests, Clara, some more public than others." A warning prickled at the back of my mind. What kind of business interests? Import, export, real estate, restaurants, private security. He waved a hand dismissively. "The specifics aren't important yet." I shifted Noah to my other shoulder, his warm weight anchoring me. "And the salary, the benefits, is there a contract?" A smile curved Lorenzo's lips. "Eager to discuss business already. Good." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a folded document, sliding it across the table. "Your employment contract. The salary is, as we discussed, 50,000 more than your previous combined income, full benefits for both you and Noah, a clothing allowance, use of a company car, all spelled out there." I glanced at the contract, the legal language swimming before my tired eyes. "I should have a lawyer look at this." "By all means." He stood, buttoning his jacket in one fluid motion. "Though I assure you it's quite standard, apart from the confidentiality clauses." "Confidentiality clauses?" I frowned. "For a personal assistant position?" Lorenzo moved around the table, coming to stand beside me. He reached out, one finger gently brushing against Noah's soft cheek. The casual possessiveness of the gesture made my breath catch. "As I said, Clara, I have many business interests. Discretion is paramount." His eyes met mine, dark and impenetrable. "But there's one matter we haven't yet discussed. Your son's father." My arms tightened instinctively around Noah. "That's personal." "Not anymore." Lorenzo's voice hardened. "His name now." Something in his tone made refusal seem dangerous. "Ethan. Ethan Cole. But he's not in our lives anymore. He made that clear." "Did he now?" Lorenzo's expression darkened. "And what exactly did he take from you besides his presence?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your voice message mentioned he was ghosting on child support. But there was something else, wasn't there?" His eyes bored into mine, seeing too much. Something of value. My heart hammered against my ribs. How could you possibly know about that? Lorenzo smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. Let's just say Ethan Cole has made himself known to me in the past, in an unfavorable way. The implications of his words sent ice through my veins. Who are you really? I told you, a businessman with diverse interests. He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face, the touch sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. Sign the contract, Clara, for Noah's sake. I looked down at my sleeping son, then back at Lorenzo, whose dark eyes held promises and threats in equal measure. And if I don't? His expression hardened. Then you return to your old apartment, to your eviction notice, to choosing between paying rent and feeding your son. He paused, his voice softening slightly. I'm offering you security, Clara. Protection for both of you. Protection from what? From men like Ethan Cole. He stepped closer, his scent enveloping me. From a world that doesn't care whether a single mother and her child survive or not. His voice dropped lower. I care, Clara. Perhaps more than I should. The intensity in his eyes made me take a step back. I need time to think. Of course. He moved toward the elevator but paused before pressing the button. 1 week's trial. No contract yet. See if the position suits you. His eyes held mine. But Clara, don't make the mistake of thinking you can walk away easily, not now that I've found you. The elevator doors closed on his enigmatic smile, leaving me alone in an apartment that suddenly felt like the most beautiful cage imaginable. Noah stirred against my shoulder, whimpering softly in his sleep, and I pressed my lips to his head. It's okay, baby, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it myself. We're going to be okay. But as I moved through the luxurious apartment that night, putting Noah to bed in his perfect nursery, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd stepped willingly into a spider's web, drawn by the promise of security, blind to the predator waiting at its center. The first week working for Lorenzo De Luca passed in a blur of luxury, unease, and subtle control. Each morning, Miles Carter arrived promptly at 8, driving me in the same sleek black car to Lorenzo's office tower downtown. The building bore no sign beyond a discreet brass plate reading De Luca Holdings. Inside, the offices were quiet and efficient, employees well-dressed, polite, and oddly cautious in Lorenzo's presence. When he walked through the halls, conversations stopped. Even the hum of printers seemed to still. I worked from a glass-walled office adjoining his, managing appointments, fielding calls, and learning quickly that import and export was only the surface of De Luca Holdings. There were encrypted documents, unmarked folders delivered by hand, and conversations in Italian that stopped the moment I entered the room. Every day at precisely noon, Lorenzo would step into my office. Lunch, he'd say, not as an invitation but as an order. He'd lead me to the penthouse cafeteria, a space more lavish than most five-star restaurants, and we'd eat in silence broken by his measured questions about Noah's health, my sleep, my comfort in the Archer apartment. When I mentioned I hadn't yet taken Noah outside because I wasn't sure where the nearest park was, the next morning a small indoor play area had been installed in the apartment, complete with padded mats, slides, and soft toys. Mr. De Luca likes to ensure his employees' families are cared for, Miles explained when I asked who authorized it. By Friday, a quiet rhythm had set in, mornings at the office, afternoons handling his correspondence, evenings spent alone with Noah while Mrs. Hawthorne hummed lullabies in the nursery. That evening, just as I was settling Noah into his crib, the elevator chimed. Lorenzo's text arrived seconds later. Dinner. My home. Dress appropriately. There was no address, only a note that Miles would arrive in 30 minutes. I stood before the closet filled with designer clothes, uncertain what appropriately meant to a man like him. I chose a knee-length black dress, simple, elegant, unassuming, and tied my hair up. Mrs. Hawthorne promised she would watch Noah for the night, her calm voice reassuring me despite the unease in my stomach. Miles drove me through the city and out toward the hills. The De Luca estate sat behind iron gates that opened silently as we approached. The mansion beyond was breathtaking, white stone and glass, surrounded by manicured gardens lit softly by hidden lamps. When I stepped inside, the scent of jasmine and aged wine filled the air. Lorenzo was waiting in the foyer, no tie, sleeves rolled up, a glass of red wine in his hand. Clara. His voice was softer than usual, almost warm. You look Perfect. He led me through wide corridors lined with artwork, abstracts, all dark and textured, to a dining room with a long table set for two. A chef appeared briefly, placing steaming plates before us, then vanished like a ghost. I wanted to thank you, Lorenzo said as we sat. You've adjusted well this week. Most people would have panicked. Most people, I replied, trying to sound steady, don't have a choice. He smiled faintly. And yet you still came. That says something about you. We ate in silence for several moments. The food was exquisite, though I could barely taste it. Finally, I said, "What exactly do you do, Lorenzo?" "The files I've seen, some don't make sense. The shipments, the coded invoices." He set down his wine glass, his eyes locking on mine. "You're observant. Good. But curiosity can be dangerous in my world." "I'm your assistant," I countered. "If I'm to do my job, I need to understand it." A slow smile curved his lips. "You remind me of my mother." That startled me. "Your mother?" "She asked too many questions too." He leaned back, gaze distant. "She was the only person who ever told my father no. He died when I was 12. My mother, a year later. My uncle raised me." He swirled his wine, his voice turning colder. "He wasn't a kind man. He taught me that trust is weakness. But my mother," he paused, eyes unfocused. "She believed in protecting what's yours at all costs." His gaze returned to me, sharp again. "I live by that now." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. After dinner, he led me out to a balcony overlooking the valley. The city glowed faintly in the distance, a sea of amber light beneath the stars. "Do you believe in fate, Clara?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm not sure." "I do." His voice was low, thoughtful. "Some people cross your path because they're meant to change everything." He turned toward me, standing close enough that I could feel his warmth. "I think you and Noah are meant to be here. With me." My breath hitched. "You barely know me." His hand lifted, tracing the air near my cheek without touching. "I know enough." There was something magnetic in his gaze, dangerous and intimate all at once. My heart pounded in my chest, confusion swirling with something I didn't want to name. "I should get back," I whispered. "Noah." "He's safe," Lorenzo interrupted. "Mrs. Hawthorne sent me updates. He fell asleep at 8:17. My stomach tightened. "She reports to you?" "She reports to me," he said simply. "Everyone in my circle does." The bluntness of his words left me speechless. He stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne surrounding me. "Don't be afraid of me, Clara." "Should I be?" I whispered. He smiled, slow, disarming, but not reassuring. "Only if you plan to betray me." Before I could respond, Miles appeared silently at the doorway. "The car is ready, sir." Lorenzo nodded, still watching me. "Take Ms. Moretti home." As I followed Miles through the grand foyer, I felt Lorenzo's gaze on me like a physical touch. When the car door closed and the mansion disappeared behind us, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. Back at the Archer apartment, the city lights flickered through the windows as I crept into Noah's nursery. He slept peacefully, one hand curled near his cheek. I stood there for a long moment, brushing a tear from my face. "I don't know what we've stepped into," I whispered. "But we're in it now." As I turned off the light, I didn't see the small black camera embedded discreetly in the corner of the nursery, its red light blinking once before going dark. 2 weeks passed before I realized how deep I'd been pulled into Lorenzo DeLuca's world. My job as his personal assistant had evolved beyond scheduling meetings and managing correspondence. I now handled encrypted files, arranged wire transfers to accounts with no listed owners, and fielded calls from men who spoke in half-sentences and code words. Sometimes Lorenzo would call me into his office late at night to dictate letters or review shipments that didn't appear on any company ledger. Other times, I caught glimpses of bruised men leaving his office, never making eye contact as they passed me. I told myself it wasn't my business. I told myself I was doing it for Noah, for the roof over our heads, the security we'd never had before. But each lie I told myself built another wall between who I was and who I was becoming. By the third week, my old life felt like a distant dream. That was when Ethan Cole came back. It was a Thursday. Lorenzo had asked me to stay late to prepare files for a private event he was hosting at one of his properties, a place his associates referred to only as the Circle. Formal attire, Lorenzo had said. I want you there. When I arrived, the Circle turned out to be an underground club hidden beneath a warehouse on the city's outskirts. The entrance was guarded by 2 men in suits who checked IDs and scanned for weapons before letting guests descend a flight of narrow stairs into a world of dim lights, expensive liquor, and murmured deals. Lorenzo was already there, seated at a poker table in the back surrounded by men whose wealth was matched only by the danger in their eyes. When he saw me, he smiled, not the polite smile he used for business, but something darker. Clara, he said, standing to take my hand. You look stunning. He led me to his side, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back as introductions were made. This is Marco Bellini, Lorenzo said, gesturing to a silver-haired man with sharp eyes and an oily smile. He's in real estate. Among other things, Bellini said, his accent thick, his gaze lingering too long on me. And this must be the famous assistant. The one everyone's talking about. I forced a polite smile. Nice to meet you. As the men played cards, I stood beside Lorenzo, silently refilling glasses and observing the undercurrent of tension that threaded through their laughter. It wasn't a friendly game, it was negotiation disguised as leisure. Halfway through the night, the door opened and a new figure entered, disheveled, nervous, eyes darting around the room. My stomach turned to ice. Ethan. He looked thinner than I remembered, his once careless charm replaced by desperation. His gaze swept the room, landing on me, and freezing there. Clara, he breathed, disbelief and something like guilt flooding his expression. Before I could respond, Lorenzo's hand tightened around mine, warning me into silence. Ah, Marco Bellini said with a smirk, so the debtor finally shows his face. Ethan swallowed hard. Mr. Bellini, I came to make things right. I've got the money. All of it. Lorenzo's tone was deceptively calm. Interesting. You didn't tell me you had business with Bellini, Clara. My throat closed. I didn't know. He smiled, cold and precise. Of course you didn't. Bellini chuckled. Our friend Mr. Cole here borrowed quite a sum a few years back. Promised to repay it after his big investment. Unfortunately, that investment turned out to be, his eyes slid to me, a child. Ethan's jaw tightened. Leave her out of this. Lorenzo's hand dropped from mine, his expression unreadable. Too late for that, don't you think? The tension in the room thickened. The air itself seemed to vibrate with unspoken menace. Ethan took a step forward. Clara, you don't understand. I didn't mean to disappear. Bellini, he threatened to hurt you if I didn't pay. I took the money and ran, thinking I could fix it and come back for you. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, watching him like a cat watches a mouse. And yet you didn't come back. Not until now, when you're cornered. I didn't know she was with you. Ethan blurted. Please, Lorenzo, if you're half the man people say you are, let her go. She doesn't belong in this world. The sound Lorenzo made was soft but lethal, something between a laugh and a sigh. You think you can tell me who belongs in my world? He stood slowly, the movement so controlled it made the room fall silent. Clara, he said, his voice smooth as glass. Take a step back. My heart hammered. Lorenzo, please don't. He turned his gaze on me, and the warning there was enough. I stepped back. Ethan, Lorenzo said, approaching him. You took what wasn't yours. You left her to starve. You left your son to cry for a father he'll never know. Ethan's face went pale. How do you? I know everything. Lorenzo stopped inches from him. And I could end you right here. But instead, I'll offer you mercy, a luxury you don't deserve. He turned to Bellini. How much does he owe you? Bellini smirked. 300,000. Lorenzo reached into his jacket and pulled out a black card. It's paid. Effective immediately. Bellini's brows lifted. Just like that. Lorenzo's voice dropped. I don't like debts that connect to what's mine. The word mine hit me like a slap. Bellini pocketed the card, nodding. Always a pleasure doing business, Lorenzo. He left, his men trailing behind him, the tension in the air dissolving with their departure. Ethan looked bewildered. "You paid my debt?" "No," Lorenzo said softly. "I erased your debt. But understand, Mr. Cole, debts don't disappear. They transfer." He glanced toward me. "You're free to leave this city tonight. If you ever come near Clara or Noah again, you won't walk away next time." Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the look in Lorenzo's eyes silenced him. "Go," Lorenzo said quietly, "before I change my mind." Ethan hesitated, then turned and fled through the same door he'd entered. The heavy sound of it closing echoed in my chest. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of jazz from the speakers. Finally, I whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Lorenzo looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Didn't I?" "He's Noah's father. He made mistakes, but—" "He's a parasite," Lorenzo interrupted sharply. "And I don't share what's mine with parasites." "Stop saying that," I snapped, anger cutting through my fear. "I'm not yours." Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes, but then he smiled, a soft, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course not," he said lightly, turning away. "Not yet." I stood frozen as he walked back to the poker table, his calm restored as if nothing had happened. That night, I couldn't sleep. When I returned to the Archer apartment, Noah was safe in his crib, but the unease in my chest wouldn't fade. I replayed every moment of the evening, Ethan's terrified eyes, Lorenzo's cold mercy, the word mine echoing in my head. I told myself I should be grateful. Ethan's debt was gone, we were safe, the threat eliminated. But gratitude felt wrong. The man who'd saved me had done it with the precision of someone removing a pawn from a chessboard. And deep down, I knew that mercy from a man like Lorenzo De Luca always came with a price. A storm rolled in the night after the confrontation with Ethan Cole. Rain lashed against the Archer building's windows, lightning flashing like the pulse of an angry sky. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lorenzo De Luca's face, the calm fury, the way he'd said mine, as if the word itself could rewrite my existence. At 2 a.m., I gave up trying to rest and wandered into the living room. The city lights shimmered through the rain, distorted by the water streaking down the glass. Noah slept soundly in his crib, blissfully unaware of the world's darkness. I didn't hear the elevator at first. Only when I felt the shift in the air, the subtle awareness that I wasn't alone, did I turn. Lorenzo stood there, drenched from the rain, his dark hair plastered to his forehead, his suit clinging to his frame. "What are you doing here?" I whispered, heart hammering. He said nothing, crossing the room with slow, deliberate steps. "I couldn't sleep," he murmured. "Neither could you." He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could see the raindrops on his lashes. "You shouldn't be here," I said, my voice barely audible. "Noah's asleep." "I needed to see you," he said, his voice hoarse. "After tonight, after everything, I had to make sure you're safe." "I was safe," I shot back, anger rising. "Until you dragged me into this world of yours." His eyes darkened. "You think I wanted that? You think I planned for Ethan to walk into my club tonight?" "You planned everything else," I said bitterly. "You knew about my life, my jobs, my child." "Because I protect what's mine," he snapped. "You and Noah." "Stop saying that." My voice cracked. "I'm not yours, Lorenzo. You can't just buy people's lives and call it protection." For a moment, silence filled the room except for the sound of rain. Then Lorenzo exhaled, the tension in his shoulders softening slightly. "You're right," he said quietly. "I can't buy you." He stepped back, running a hand through his wet hair. "I never wanted this control. It's just the only way I know how to keep people safe." His voice changed then, lower, rougher, almost vulnerable. "When I was a boy, my parents died in a car crash. My mother was still alive when they found her, trapped under the wreckage. She used her last breath to tell me to never let anyone hurt me again. My uncle made sure I learned that lesson well." He looked away, jaw tight. "Everything I've built, the power, the money, it's all armor, Clara. But with you," his eyes met mine again. "You make me forget the armor exists." My throat tightened. "That's not love, Lorenzo. That's possession." He stepped closer. You think I don't know the difference? Maybe I don't. Maybe love and control are the same thing when you've spent your life trying to protect what's left of you. Then let me go, I whispered. He reached out, his hand brushing my cheek, a feather-light touch that sent a shiver down my spine. If I let you go, you'll walk straight back into a world that doesn't care if you or your son survive. I'd rather face the world than lose myself here, I said, tears burning behind my eyes. For a long moment, he just looked at me, his face unreadable, his breathing slow and controlled. Then, with a soft exhale, he nodded. Tomorrow morning, he said quietly, Miles will take you wherever you want to go. My heart twisted. You're serious? His jaw flexed. You think I'd keep a woman who doesn't want to stay? I didn't answer. He turned to leave, but paused at the elevator. You'll find something in the envelope on your desk, he said without looking back. A trust fund for Noah. Enough to make sure he never has to struggle the way you did. Lorenzo. Don't thank me, he said softly. Just, don't hate me. The elevator doors closed, taking him with them. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space he'd left behind, the weight of his absence pressing on my chest. The next morning, a heavy silence filled the apartment. I dressed Noah, fed him breakfast, and gathered our few belongings. On the desk sat a thick envelope, just as Lorenzo had said. Inside was a check with more zeros than I'd ever seen in my life, and a note written in his precise handwriting. Protection isn't always a cage. Sometimes it's a shield you don't realize you need. LD. Tears blurred the words. Miles arrived at 9 sharp, expression as impassive as ever. Where to, Ms. Moretti? I looked down at Noah in his car seat, his tiny fingers grasping mine. Drive, I said quietly. Just drive. We left the Archer building behind, the skyline shrinking in the rear-view mirror. I didn't know where we were going, only that it had to be somewhere else, somewhere new. Weeks passed. I found a small apartment on the coast, a job at a local art gallery, and slowly began building a quieter life. Noah grew stronger, happier, his laughter filling the small space that was hours and hours alone. But sometimes at night when the sea wind rattled the windows, I'd think about Lorenzo, about the storm in his eyes, the way he said my name like a prayer and a warning all at once. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a small package arrived with no return address. Inside was a simple velvet box. I opened it, and my breath caught. Inside lay my grandmother's ring, the heirloom Ethan had stolen years ago. It glimmered under the fading light, restored, flawless. There was a note tucked beneath it. For Noah's mother, L. I pressed the ring to my chest, tears spilling freely. Somewhere out there I knew he was watching, not to control, not to claim, but to protect in the only way he knew how. And for the first time in years, I whispered into the quiet, thank you. The wind carried the words away, across the sea, where perhaps they'd find him.